Forget everything your history teacher told you, because the past wasn't a series of polite oil paintings. It was a chaotic, unhinged fever dream of gross hygiene, medical malpractice, and absolute incompetence. We're stripping away the textbook lies to show you the side of humanity that's usually scrubbed from the record, from the literal stench of royalty to the time the government tried to poison its own people. Get ready, because these 10 deep dives into our bizarre heritage are about to permanently ruin your view of the good old days. Number 1. The Gilded Biohazard, the Stench of Versailles. When you think of the Palace of Versailles, you probably imagine the pinnacle of 17th century romance, gold leaf, crystal chandeliers, and powdered wigs. But if you were actually transported to the court of King Louis XIV, the first thing to assort your senses wouldn't be the beauty, it would be the eye-watering, throat-burning smell of raw human waste. Despite being the most expensive residence on the planet, Versailles was built with a catastrophic design flaw. It had almost no functional sewage system and a pathetic lack of toilets for the thousands of aristocrats living there. The reality of high society was that elegantly dressed dukes and duchesses, draped in silk and lace, would simply squat behind heavy velvet curtains in dark stairwells or right in the middle of a garden path while continuing their conversations. There was no plumbing to carry it away, so the filth simply accumulated. Servants were tasked with constantly spraying gallons of heavy, expensive perfume everywhere just to keep people from fainting from the stench. It created a nauseating, thick cocktail of lavender, musk, and rotting sewage that defined the smell of the French monarchy. This wasn't a civilized palace, it was a gold-plated biohazard zone where watching your step was the most important rule of etiquette. Number 2. Operation Interstellar Dolphin, NASA's LSD phase. In the 1960s, NASA decided that the best use of their taxpayer-funded budget was a project that sounds like a psychedelic hallucination. They wanted to see if humans could communicate with extraterrestrials, and they figured dolphins were the best practice partners. Enter researcher Margaret Howe Lovett, who lived in a semi-aquatic, flooded house with a dolphin named Peter for 10 weeks. The goal was to teach Peter to speak English, which is already a stretch, but then the lead scientist, John C. Lilly, decided to take things into the twilight zone. Lilly became obsessed with the idea that LSD could bridge the communication gap between species. He began dosing the dolphins with high-grade acid to see if it would unlock their brains and allow them to speak human languages. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Instead of a talking dolphin discussing the secrets of the universe, the experiment devolved into an ethical nightmare where Peter the dolphin became aggressively infatuated with his teacher. When the funding eventually dried up and the project was shuttered, the heartbroken dolphin reportedly committed suicide by refusing to breathe. It remains a terrifying example of what happens when high-level science loses its grip on reality. Number 3. The Cadaver Synod, the trial of a rotting corpse. In the year 897, the Catholic Church proved that being dead and buried for 7 months was not a valid excuse to skip a court date. Pope Stephen VI was so consumed with a blood feud with his predecessor, Pope Formosus, that he ordered the man's decaying body to be dug up and brought to trial. This wasn't a symbolic hearing. They actually dragged the rotting skeletal remains into the courtroom, dressed them in full ornate papal vestments, and propped the corpse up on a throne to face charges of perjury and illegal church maneuvers. To make the spectacle even more surreal, a young deacon was assigned to stand behind the corpse and speak for the dead man, likely while trying not to vomit from the stench. Unsurprisingly, the corpse lost the case. The court stripped the body of its robes, chopped off the 3 fingers Formosus had used to give blessings, and dragged the remains through the streets before dumping them into the Tiber River. This cadaver synod remains the most metal and most disturbing moment in church history, proving that in medieval Italy, grudges lasted way beyond the grave. Number 4. The Portuguese Mouthwash, Rome's Golden Smile. The Romans gave us the foundations of modern Western civilization, but their dental hygiene routine would make a modern dentist faint. In ancient Rome, a bright, gleaming white smile was the ultimate status symbol, but they didn't have Crest or Colgate. Instead, they discovered that ammonia was a fantastic whitening agent. Their primary source for this chemical, human urine. But the Romans weren't just using local produce, they were connoisseurs of waste. The Roman elite believed that the most potent, high-quality urine in the world came from Portugal. They actually established trade routes to import jugs of Portuguese pee across the empire. Wealthy senators would start their morning by gargling a cup of imported bodily fluids to ensure their teeth stayed pearly white for their speeches in the forum. They even taxed the collection of urine from public laundries because it was such a valuable industrial commodity. It's a stomach-turning reminder that the glory of Rome was often built on things we'd rather not think about, giving the phrase potty mouth a literal and horrifying historical origin. Number 5. The tapeworm diet, a monster in your gut. The Victorian era was defined by a bizarre and dangerous beauty standard known as the fragile aesthetic. People wanted to look pale, weak, and possess waistlines so tiny they looked physically impossible. To achieve this, many socialites turned to the most horrifying weight loss plan ever conceived, the tapeworm diet. People would intentionally swallow a pill containing a cyst of a beef tapeworm. The logic was simple. The parasite would hatch in your intestines and eat a portion of every meal you consumed, allowing you to binge on cake and mutton while still losing weight. The reality was a living nightmare. You weren't just losing weight, you were hosting a 30-foot-long segmented worm that was stealing your nutrients and occasionally laying thousands of eggs inside you. The real horror came when you reached your goal weight and had to get the monster out. Doctors would sometimes hold a bowl of warm milk in front of the patient's open mouth, hoping the worm would smell the food and crawl out through the throat. It's the ultimate testament to the fact that human vanity has always been more powerful than common sense or the basic instinct for self-preservation.
Number 6. The Emu War, Australia's most embarrassing defeat. In 1932, the Australian government officially declared war on an army of 20,000 birds. A massive migration of emus was ravaging the wheat fields of Western Australia, so the military was sent in with Lewis machine guns and 10,000 rounds of ammunition to settle the score. The commander, Major Meredith, expected a quick slaughter, but he didn't count on the emu's superior tactical maneuvers. The birds didn't huddle together. They split into small, fast-moving units that outran the Army's trucks and dodged bullets with ease. The emus proved to be incredibly resilient, with many taking multiple hits from machine gun fire and simply continuing to run like feathered tanks. After a week of wasted ammo and global embarrassment, the military was forced to retreat. The enemy had won. The official military report actually praised the emus, stating that if they had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of those birds, they could face any army in the world. To this day, Australia remains the only nation on Earth to be soundly defeated by a flock of flightless birds in a formal military engagement. Number 7. 7-Up and the lithium buzz. In the modern world, we think of 7-Up as a simple, caffeine-free lemon-lime soda. But when it was first launched in 1929, right as the Great Depression hit, it was marketed as a literal mood-altering drug. The original formula contained lithium citrate, a chemical that is now strictly regulated and used to treat bipolar disorder and severe depression. It was sold under the catchy name Bib Label Lithiated Lemon Lime Soda and was marketed as a health tonic that could take the ouch out of the grouch. Mothers were encouraged to give it to their children to calm them down, and it became a legendary cure for hangovers because the lithium effectively numbed the nervous system. The company only removed the lithium in 1948 after the government began cracking down on medicated soft drinks. For nearly 2 decades, millions of Americans were walking around in a drug-induced, lithium-fueled haze, completely unaware that their favorite refreshment was actually a bottle of liquid psychiatry.
It's a chilling reminder of the days when food safety was more of a suggestion than a rule. Number 8. The North Carolina nuke, luck over logic. In 1961, at the height of the Cold War, the United States came within a single, cheap switch of nuking its own East Coast. A B-52 bomber carrying two massive Mark 39 hydrogen bombs broke apart in midair over Goldsboro, North Carolina. As the plane disintegrated, the bombs fell toward the Earth, and on one of them, the full arming sequence initiated. This wasn't a drill. The parachute deployed, the internal batteries charged, and the triggers set themselves to fire upon impact. These bombs were 260 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima. If it had detonated, a massive portion of the East Coast, including cities like Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, would have been permanently deleted from the map. Out of the 4 safety mechanisms designed to prevent an accidental explosion, 3 failed completely. The only thing that prevented a nuclear catastrophe was a single low-voltage manual switch that happened to stay in the off position. We didn't survive that day because of military genius or superior engineering. We survived because of a $2 piece of hardware and pure dumb luck. Number 9. The Pirate Queen, the prostitute who ruled the seas. Forget everything you've seen in Pirates of the Caribbean. The most successful pirate in history wasn't a guy with a parrot. It was Zheng Yi Sao, a former prostitute from Canton, who rose to command the most terrifying criminal empire the oceans have ever seen. In the early 19th century, she took over her late husband's fleet and expanded it into the Red Flag Fleet, consisting of over 40,000 pirates and hundreds of massive warships. Her fleet was literally larger than the navies of most sovereign nations at the time. She was a ruthless tactical genius who enforced a strict legal code. If you stole from the communal treasury or disobeyed an order, she would cut your head off on the spot. She fought and defeated the Chinese Imperial Navy, the British Royal Navy, and the Portuguese. Eventually, the Chinese government realized they could never beat her, so they offered her a truce. She didn't just escape, she negotiated a deal where she kept all her stolen loot, evaded prison, and was allowed to retire peacefully to run a gambling house. She is the only pirate in history who truly won the game on her own terms. Number 10. The Poisoned Cup, Prohibition's Dark Secret. During Prohibition, the U.S. government became so frustrated with the fact that people refused to stop drinking that they decided to turn a public health crisis into a state-sponsored mass murder. Bootleggers were known to steal industrial alcohol, used for things like cleaning and fuel, and redistill it to make moonshine. In 1926, federal officials ordered manufacturers to add lethal poisons, including gasoline, kerosene, and formaldehyde, to the industrial supply to make it undrinkable. They assumed that if people knew the alcohol was poison, they would stop drinking it. They were dead wrong. People kept drinking the tainted supply, and as a result, over 10,000 Americans died from government-mandated poisoning. Hospitals were flooded with people going blind or dying of toxic shock, yet the government refused to stop the program for years. It remains one of the darkest and most controversial chapters in American history, a moment when the government decided that the penalty for having a cocktail should be a slow, agonizing death. The past isn't a museum of noble heroes. It's a graveyard of bizarre accidents, questionable hygiene, and choices that make modern life look like a paradise. We've looked at everything from the literal smell of the French throne to the time the U.S. government used chemical warfare on its own citizens, proving that the more you dig into history, the weirder and grosser it gets. So next time you feel like the world is falling apart, just remember that at least you're not gargling imported waste or swallowing tapeworms for a beach body. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.